Welcome to our first Twitter space. Today we'll be having a discussion on the NSSF regulatory changes. That's the 2024, and with the theme being understanding the 2024 NSSF contributory changes, where we'll be dissecting the recent adjustments, which are set to take effect from February, with increased deductions, also shedding light to the earning limits and the broader impact on retirement planning. Our guest speaker will also be shedding light on why it is important to support the new regulatory changes and what it means for the pension industry as well. So with us, we have Mainga Daniel. Mainga Daniel is the General Manager for Pensions at Minet Kenya. He's a seasoned pensions expert with so many years in the pensions industry. Karibu sana Mainga. You can start by giving us a brief introduction of yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Mainga, like Clive has indicated, the General Manager, Minet Kenya Financial Services. I was invited today to discuss really the new NSSF Act, and I'm more than ready to just progress with the discussion. I know Clive had been also to asked to touch base on some saving, on why save. But I don't know where to start. Do I start with the discussion around savings, or do I go just direct on the NSSF?
Daniel, you can begin by taking the listeners through savings as a culture, particularly touching on the Kenyan sector, just how we have progressed from the old NSSF to the new NSSF, probably why it is important, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Okay, I don't know whether it's you breaking or on my end. I hardly heard what you said. However, maybe I can just go deep into the topic of the day, and this is the NSSF Act. Okay. So, listeners, we are here to discuss majorly the NSSF Act of 2013. By simple background introduction, the National Social Security Fund was established in 1965 through an Act of Parliament, Cap 258 of the Laws of Kenya. The NSSF became a state corporation in the year 1987 and is managed by a board of trustees. What is important for us to note is that the fundamental purpose of the NSSF is basically to provide Kenyan citizens with a financial safety net at the point when these individuals retire. Whether that benefit has been sufficient or not, I think that's a different discussion, which probably we can touch base today during our today's discussion. So NSSF was initially established as a provident fund that granted retirees a lump sum payment. However, the NSSF Act was reversed in the year 2013. I think the date was 27th of December 2013, which led now to the enactment of the NSSF Act number 45 of 2013. I think for starters, someone may want to know or even understand exactly what are the objectives of the new act. Why change it from the former to the current? Just again, by way of introduction, what we used to contribute before last year commencement date of February 2023, what we used to contribute there was around 200 shillings by employee and 200 shillings by the employer. So a total of 400 shillings per month. Now, this used to go into what we call a provident fund. So the 200 shillings that we used to contribute used to be invested by the NSSF, and this used to be accrued in a fund until a retirement age. At that point, what retirees used to claim was a lump sum check. So in a provident fund environment, this is where members or the people who've been saving through the fund used to access the full benefit in cash lump sum. So for the new Act of 2013, what it entails to do is it is changing to what you call a pension scheme or pension arrangement, meaning at the point of retirement, then the total pot that you'll have saved by retirement age is utilized by buying what you call an annuity, or basically a monthly pension, which is what it means. And therefore, making every member start accessing a monthly pension, at least for the rest of their lives, or depending on the kind of option they'll be selecting. Okay? So the key objectives of this new act is number one, adequacy. Remember, we used to contribute what I've mentioned, the 200 shillings, employer 200, which is basically 400. Uh-huh. If you calculate, even if you worked for around 30 years, by contributing 400 per month, that equals to roughly about 144,000. That for sure cannot make up what you call a retirement pension. Okay? So the key purpose for the new act was to ensure that we enhance the benefit is well enhanced. The other key objective for the new act was also to ensure that um, new, uh, new set of Kenyans are also adopted through this. That is the people we call self-employed individuals, so that they can also start making their monthly saving, so that by the time they are living, that they then they have a good safety net. The other objective for the new act was, of course, to provide an opt out for employers, meaning, like I'll be taking you through in a few minutes, any employer who already has an existing pension fund, a private occupational fund, for as long as it meets the minimum criteria, that is, employees are contributing 6% of their gross pay, and the employer is contributing the same 6%, then they can contract out by applying through the Retirement Benefits Authority, and therefore their tier 2 contribution starts going into the pot of their private fund. Okay? Their as objective was also to strengthen corporate governance. NSSF, people not trusting the board or even the activities of the board, maybe investing in some areas not members' returns, so again, uh, quote unquote, the new NSSF structured in a manner to ensure that it adheres to the Retirement Benefits Authority regulations, and therefore it is also well constituted, of course, representing employees, the employer, and many other participants who are, enrolled within the board. Now, I, as a recap on the introduction, I said the bill was passed into law and gazetted on 27th of December 2013. The act was initially effective from 10th of January, but the Cabinet Secretary deferred the effective date to 31st of May 2014. However, the implementation of the act was faced with legal challenges and was therefore suspended immediately. Now, that court case has gone on all the way to the year 2022 in September, when it came back within the courts. And again, to cut the long story short, last year, 3rd of February, it was thrown out, and therefore the act came alive, right? So effective February of 2023, the implementation of the new act was implemented, and therefore employees started contributing 1,080 if they were earning at least 18,000 of their monthly pay, right? So what does that really mean? It means every worker in Kenya who is employed under contract of service, written or even oral, then must contribute to the NSSF, and again with the minimum stipulated contributions of 6%, both employee and the employer. Now, there are two categories of contribution, which is Tier 1 and Tier 2. There's what we call the upper earning limit and the lower earning limit, which is simply what dictates how the contribution rates are supposed to, which basically guides the contribution rates to this new act. Now, so within the first year, the contribution to a maximum salary of 18,000. Now, the upper national average earning at the point of implementation of 2013 was deemed to be around 36,000. But for implementation purposes, the first year was supposed to be a contribution based on half of that. So half of 36,000 it is 18,000, which is 6% of that to be contributed by both the employee and the employer, anyone who is in a formal employment contract. Okay? So for Tier 1, it was separated to, the contribution was meant to be based on a rate of 6% at 6,000, which translates to about 360 shillings. Now, if the total of 6%, if you compute 6% of 18,000, then you get 1,080. So for you to contribute both Tier 1 and Tier 2, since the maximum is there stipulated at 6% of 18,000, then under Tier 1, you send the 360 shillings to NSSF. If you've contracted out, the balance of 1,080, which is 720, is meant to go to your private scheme if you've already contracted out. But maybe the question, what is contracting out? I had earlier alluded that contracting out is simply making if you already have an existing private occupational scheme, it's where you make the application to the Retirement Benefits Authority. You give them the required documentation, which states basically you already have an existing fund, which you are meeting the minimum criteria, and especially on the contribution rates. 6%. And therefore, that way, you can be allowed to contract out of the contribution of the Tier 2, the higher amount. So for the first year, if you look at the progression table that was given by the Act, was such that for year 1, 2, 3, and 4, for progression purposes or implementation, then it had a guideline of what salaries to peg this to. So for the first year, like I said, it was capped at 18,000, which was deemed to be 50% of the upper national average earning of 36,000 then. For year 2, which year 2 actually starts this coming month of February in 2 days. What will happen in February is that we'll move from 1,080 to 2,160. It's because for year 2 now we are going to the next level of contribution at 6% of a maximum of 36,000. Now, one may ask, what if my salary is below 36,000? If anyone's salary is 20,000 or even any amount below 36, then that is deemed to be the cap. So it is 6% of that amount that you earn if it is 20,000. However, if your salary is any amount above 36,000, a good example is 100,000, then the maximum could be pegged on 6% of 36,000. So 6% of 36,000 is 2,160, which is again split into Tier 1 and Tier 2. For Tier 1, Year 2, we are using the lower national average earning of 7,000. So 6% of 7,000. That gives you 420 shillings. So the difference from the 2160 is 1,740. That goes to your Tier 2 of NSSF. If you have a private occupational scheme, then you send your contributions to the private fund, which is 1,740. But Tier 1 of 420 shillings must go to the NSSF. That one is not a discussion at this point. So that is really the gist of the matter. So for year one, the maximum pegged salary 18, year two 36,000, year three it goes up to 72,000, year four 108,000. So if I may concentrate just on the last year of the implementation year, which is the fourth year, pegged at 108,000, it will mean anyone earning above that will still have their contribution pegged on the cap of 108,000. Anyone earning below that will still be pegged on the figure of, assume, 80,000. Implementation years, which is the first 4 years. Question would be, what happens after the fourth year? So after that, we'll be waiting for, I know most of the time we may not be very keen to listen to, the Labor Day discussions, but it will be very important for the Cabinet Secretary for Labor. It will be important for us to listen what kind of announcement or whatever salaries would be announced as the new figures, or where we would be pegging our contribution rates at. So that will apply for both the lower earning limit and also the upper earning limit. So that is what will dictate. But otherwise, the contributions for now will remain at 6% for both employee and employer going forward. I just hope that has been clear, because this is really the gist of these new contributions. And I think most Kenyans will get to understand this after these coming month deductions, because we are moving to the year two. Right? Year three will even be felt harder, because 6% of 72,000 will mean employees are actually parting with a lot more, 4,320.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds high, but it is as per the progression table. All right? So that
Right.
will continue. There's a question?
Yeah. Thank you very much for that elaborate explanation. You had earlier mentioned about contracting by employers. Are there any conditions for employers that they should meet in order to be eligible for contracting out? And also, are there any exemptions towards contribution to the NSSF Act? Probably the people who are not under formal employment, are they mandated?
Right, good questions. So NSSF contracting out requirements. Um, like I said earlier, first of all, the authority to give that mandate to contract out is actually the Retirement Benefits Authority and not the NSSF itself. So anyone intending to do this must apply to the Retirement Benefits Authority to contract out 60 days prior the opting out date. Okay? That is a laid down procedure. The Retirement Benefits Authority is meant to approve the applications within 30 days of application. That is what came with the Act. And if the scheme is approved, then the Retirement Benefits Authority shall provide what you call the reference scheme certificate and even the contracting out certificate. This is what will allow you within those 60 days to actually start contributing to your private occupational scheme, or where you've actually contracted out to. Now, what would be the actual requirements for you to make the application? One would be the employer's resolution, stating that the employer is willing to contract out for its employees on tier two of the NSSF contributions. Number two would be a trustee's resolution, stating that they're going to, or rather they're willing to accept the tier two of the NSSF contributions. There's also what you're calling the notice to members. The contributing members need to be notified, and not just notified, also educated in terms of what this really means by contracting out. whether when you're contracting out, what that means. So that notice actually is also required. The sponsors undertakings is also there. It's important for everyone to note that even when a scheme has contracted out or specific sponsors have contracted out, whenever they come or those contributions every other month, they are very protected. So they cannot be accessed or paid to any employee, whether they resign or keep changing jobs. Those amounts are not payable. They're supposed to be or what we call it is a preserved benefit, and this is until a retirement age. I think one of the key changes that the NSSF was trying to do is ensure our savings are withheld until a retirement age, so that we can have a substantial, amount to retire on. There are a few other administrative requirements. There's a form to fill, what we call Form C1. Okay, there is a deed of amendment to be prepared by the respective legal advisor appointed. There's certificate by an actuary if it is a defined benefit arrangement scheme, or the administrator if it is a defined contribution scheme. And then, of course, the list of all the employees who the employer is actually asking to contract out for. So it is a list that is there even if you were to go to the website, you would see this. But again, if anyone needs any help, Minet, this is what we do on a daily basis, and therefore would be easily accessible to assist any specific sponsor on this. Okay. I think there is another question you had raised. There are people now. There is no exemption in terms of employees who are formally employed, basically within the country, to stop contributing to the NSSF, unless someone has proven documentation to indicate they're actually members of another scheme elsewhere, which our NSSF recognizes. Okay, our local, right? But
Okay.
otherwise,
Sorry,
for as long as
you
one
may
is
proceed.
formally employed in Kenya, is someone talking?
No,
Right?
just proceed, Daniel.
No, I was just trying to say that for as long as one is formally employed in the country and you are residing in the country, you really have to contribute towards the NSSF. However, for at the point when one is leaving the country, then there are also exemptions as to one can actually transfer those benefits or even access if they are not Kenyans and they are relocating back to their countries. I think those few exemptions are there, but you must make the applications formally for consideration.
Okay. And probably you can speak on Kenyans who are not formally employed. Does the Act cover that sector for Kenyans? What opportunities are there for them in case they want to plug in?
Yeah, I think I earlier stated that one of the key objectives for this act, and which we believe is out there, was to incorporate self-employed individuals so that they can also start making this saving. Within the constitution, I think there's also what we're calling the social responsibility thing. So I think through this act, the government was trying to enforce every Kenyan to ensure that they have a retirement saving. Now, in this country, up to today, other than the NSSF contribution that we are making, it is not mandatory for any employer to set up a private occupational pension scheme or provident fund, right? So, what this act was trying to do was to ensure that anyone who is formally employed, then at least they can start making a substantial amount. Like I've indicated in that tabulation, the contributions we are making now are starting to grow. They are reasonable. If I move to the saving discussion, you know, many a times we can say one is making a saving for their retirement or for future use. But I want to tell you what we always sense or make a difference to the individuals who are making. Because it was 200 shillings for people who are earning even million shillings. If you look at a few corporates who are paying employees quite well, I mean, 200 shillings was really nothing, if I may say, because someone earning a million, for example, and then at the end of their retirement age, assume they have no private pension arrangement, they only have a check of 160,000 from NSSF. I mean, that's really not a retirement fund. So this act was trying to bring in the sense that people need to make considerable amounts so that it can make a difference at the point of retirement, as opposed to those meager kind of contributions. So, yes, both corporates and even private employees, self employed individuals, are allowed to contribute to NSSF so that they can have a pot by the point of retirement.
Thank you, Daniel. At this point, before we proceed, or before I proceed with my next set of questions, I'd like to open up the floor. Our dear listeners, if you have any questions, please feel free to switch on your mic.
I have a question. I don't know if I missed out on the informal sector. What happens to the informal sector savings? Are they also going to contribute, or how is their retirement benefits taken care of?
Informal sector, I'm not very clear. Okay, let me maybe explain this again slowly. Anyone who is in a formal employment, there is no discussion. They have to be members and contribute based on the new rates. Any setups, including very small SMEs, they're also considered as formal. And therefore, even if you have 2 employees or even 1 employee, for as long as you have formally registered business, then you're supposed to contribute. Now, those individuals who are in the informal, can I just say the commonly used word, the Juakali sort of sector, or those who are hustling, like my side hustle, if I've employed someone. Now, those kind of individuals, I think, have an option. And those are the people we are calling self-employed. They have an option of contributing to the NSSF. Okay? Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did. So how do they contribute then to the NSSF, and what is their minimum?
Cara, I didn't hear you, unless it's my network. I didn't hear you right. But is there any other question from anyone else?
She's inquiring, how does the Juakali sector contribute to NSSF, and what's the minimum, if any?
No, it's quite simple in terms of the process. For anyone who is in the informal sector or the Juakali sector, they can easily reach out to the nearest or their respective nearest NSSF office. The alternative is come to Minet so that we can enroll them in what we call individual pension plan. And I think that is the easiest because this is what we do on a day-to-day. I know there has been fears raised by the industry or several individuals. If you're not too comfortable going direct, you need to visit Minet. We have a product, what we call Minet Individual Pension Plan, where those individuals can actually, we can enroll them and they start saving. And yeah, they can have a good package for their retirement. And we'll give them so many other options that are available, which includes even post-retirement medical products, just to ensure that they have both a pension saving and also a medical fund which they can, build up to the days when they'll not be in a position to work. Okay.
Thank you for the clarification, Daniel. Especially where you've touched on small businesses like SMEs, those that are registered but have 2 employees. I think it's now clear that those ones are also expected to contribute like the rest of the corporate organizations. I think previously there was that lack of clarity as to whether they fall under jua kali or still within the formally employed sector? Thank you. Probably you can also just take the listeners through why it's important to save. I know we keep talking about why it's important to save. When is the best time to start saving, and what are the opportunities for the youth in terms of preparing for their retirement?
On saving, I think the best time to start saving is actually today, and that is assuming someone has never started. Yeah, because we say the earlier you start, the better. You need to just start saving as soon as you can possibly do. In fact, your first paycheck should have been your first. A portion should have gone into your, into your savings. But when it comes to savings, I always tell people to always treat savings as part of their necessary expense. The same way they pay rent, they pay for their water or any other, any other bills that comes every other month. It's always important to make that saving. Now, it's important to always have a savings plan of roughly between 10 to 15% of one's income. All right. This should be done progressively from the early years of working, and that will ensure that if you work around between 10 to 15% of your income, I can assure you you'll retire comfortably. Okay. There's what we call income replacement ratio. If you start saving late, it may be very difficult for you to beat the income replacement ratio, meaning the amount you are earning, your total income just before retirement. We always say it's important then roughly at least up to 60% minimum of what you are earning before then. All right. But otherwise, if it is below the 60%, you will struggle with your life after retirement. The unfortunate thing is, if you look at the average Kenyan who has been saving through pension schemes and other kind of income related vehicles, studies have indicated that on average, the income replacement ratio between 20 to around 30, which is quite poor, meaning majority will actually struggle. Very few, just below 5% of those savers actually retire on a good replacement ratio. So that calls, it's a big alarm, and therefore we just need to be clear that saving is important because there are so many things you may have to deal with even after retirement. And we are talking about your debts. You still have debts even in retirement because we are saying you'll continue paying bills. You may not pay for electricity, assuming you have solar. But those are plans you also make quite early in your life. All right? What about water, though? Right? So bills will always be there, and you must plan for them at the earliest time possible. Now, even as we save, most of the questions that come are, okay, assume I've put aside 5,000 shillings. Where do I take it to? All right. So some of the areas people can take these funds is as follows. One, you can consider, if you have a pension scheme, setting up an individual pension plan so that you start accumulating a fund there. There is what you call money markets or unit trusts, which are being offered all across. If anyone needs help, they can still talk to Minet and we'll assist them with this kind of information. Okay? One can invest in property. I think when it comes to property, Kenyans, for sure, this is a no brainer. Most Kenyans have at least a plot somewhere. Okay? It's a good thing. But again, it's also important for you to gauge exactly what kind of plot, what the location, what is the legal status, what is the security of that plot or the property you're buying. So those are things you need to also consider. But these are areas you can invest in. All right. You can also invest in what you call the stock market, the equities. Remember, the equities really are not for those who are retiring, but those who have a long term route to long-term horizon, if I may say. For example, if you start investing through the stock market in your early ages, probably in your 20s, you can actually pump as much as you can, but of course to selected stocks, not just any stock. You must do your due diligence or get a financial person who can assist you with this kind of diligence or advice. Buy these shares and just forget them. Let them stay there for 10, 15, 20 years. I can assure you, you will drip out. There are different ways of even dripping out. As you select these stocks, there are stocks that give you very good dividends, okay? And there are stocks that appreciate. So by the time you're buying, you must also consider those. There are those that are easy to appreciate based on the valuation at the point when you're buying, and there are stocks that people buy because they pay dividends every other year after declaration of the company's financials. So those are things to consider in. I know most Kenyans also say they're in investment clubs. You must be very careful. I've seen people who've really struggled or suffered putting money together in what you call investment clubs, buying land, properties that have issues at some point, or even the club, disintegrates at some point. So those are warning signs. You need to be very careful. Those are things you need to be very selective before you put in your money. But of course, one can also through, setting up a personal business, which you can plan to grow over time, such that by the time you're retiring, then you have a safety net. You know where you'll be spending most of your time. So those are things we must always keep in mind and ask ourselves the right questions. So why should you do all those things? There's different financial objectives that we talk about. So I've talked about bills. Now, what about your children? If you plan to get children, or if you got children a bit late, meaning by the time you're retiring, you'll still be having children who are going to school. It is important that you plan for that. So that's why you must save. All right? If you've not bought a family home when you're still strong and working, those are things you must do at this point when you're still strong. Don't wait until the retirement check. All right? That retirement fund, you need to plan for that. That's why you must save. All right? Ensure the day-to-day living costs are also met. The bills. What about the animal we call airtime? People don't realize how much you spend on airtime. But if you do your maths, you may be surprised. So these are things people must look into, because in retirement, assume you've just been all through informal sector where you get a monthly salary, then in retirement you may struggle. So those are things you must think through at the earliest time possible. Medical costs, whether we like it or not, we shall age, and as you age, you are prone to, certain diseases. And the costs, of course, have also been skyrocketing. I've never seen medical costs going down. They're always going up. So again, those are very important considerations when we okay. Okay. Now, we are Africans, and most of the time we have these extended families' financial obligations. It's idea we use school fees, this other person, and that kind of a thing. So those are things you must plan for. Now, if today you're working and it's still strong and you're doing holidays, what about in retirement? Again, those are things you must save and plan for. And that time is still when you still have a stable income. So again, even upgrading of your car, if you're used to driving, the phones, the clothes that you wear, and so many other things. And even latest, children. Our children are not moving out of the house. And even if they do, some of them, you're still taking care of them. Those are things, because of lifestyle changes, those are things you must look into, and of course ensure that you are financially secure. Don't expect your children to take care of you. So it's important to save. And yeah, I think those are the pointers I needed to raise on that question. Clive, any further questions?
Not related to what we've discussed, but thank you very much for the technical and making us aware that it is possible to start saving for our retirement. There is a question here. Somebody is asking.
I can't hear Clive.
Hi, Daniel.
Yes, I
Okay,
can
there
now.
is a question. Okay,
Yes.
somebody is asking, since they are contributing every month to NSSF, what is the quickest or how
Again,
can
I
they
can't hear
check?
you.
Hello,
You are breaking. Yep.
hello,
Come again.
can you hear me now?
I think I've
Hello.
lost you. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, somebody is asking, how do they check for their NSSF contribution or access their NSSF statement since they are making contributions every month?
Okay. I didn't get the first part, but can I assume someone has a question asking how can they access their contribution from NSSF
And
and their statements?
yes, 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 yes.
Right. Okay. Um, so NSSF seems to be a personal effort. So I know there are different branches all over in each county. So the best would be every year make sure you visit the nearest NSSF office, give them your personal NSSF number, and they will print you out your statement. Now, in the past, I've seen a few employers who organize for NSSF to actually bring those statements printed for all their employees at a go, and they are distributed to all the employees. So, those are some of the things that different employers may pursue. If not, the respective contributor should always go to any of the NSSF offices with their NSSF number and they'll be given their statement. That is what they say, and I hope there is a fish nowadays, like they say. Thank you.
I'll throw the discussion back to the floor. Our listeners, if you have any other question for Mr. Mainga, please turn on your mic as we close. Right, if there are no questions, Daniel, probably close with a parting shot. You can take the listeners through what the Minet Pensions Solutions has for our listeners and how they can reach the division.
Okay. So really, thank you for that, Clive. As we stop this conversation, I think I just want to remind you it's important to save, whether through the NSSF, but most important, private savings. Because you can easily review and make decisions on, or even make follow-ups and changes depending on the environment. So that is what I would urge. And nobody should feel like they're late, because we always say at the point when you start really, you get to hear of such information at a point, right? Even if you are retiring tomorrow, question is whatever minimal or much you've saved, how do you utilize that? Those are some of the services we can offer, because we can advise you on how to handle your financials. Okay. And then the kind of offerings, if you are interested in saving discussions or even the pension offering, we do have what we call umbrella pensions and even the Minet individual pension arrangement. For the Minet individual, this is where anyone can just open an account and start contributing. For the Minet umbrella, this is where we have most employers who have said they don't understand pension. All they want to do is set up an arrangement and therefore start contributing immediately without handling the day-to-day kind of issues to do with the legislation on pension. So we encourage SMEs and even big corporates to join the Minet umbrella, because that just takes away the headache of management on a day-to-day basis. So other than that, we do offer investment consulting. We do have internal actuaries who will sit with you and design or even check the financial soundness of your institution or even the schemes that you are running already. It's been great speaking to the audience.
Thank you, Daniel, for the wonderful overview. Dear listeners, that has been Minet's Twitter space on understanding the 2024 NSSF contribution changes. I hope this brief session, this brief 1 hour has been of value to you. For more information, please feel free to follow Minet's social media pages for updates on NSSF changes. That's Minet Kenya on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as through email. You can reach us through at info@minet.co.ke. Thank you for your time. We wish to close it there. Stay tuned for more Twitter conversations. Asanteni.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.